The Holy Week is an important time in the Christian calendar as it commemorates the events leading up to Jesus Christ's crucifixion and resurrection. Believers should reflect on the life, teachings, and sacrifice of Jesus Christ during this time to strengthen their faith and devotion to God. The Holy Week starts with Palm Sunday, commemorating Jesus' entry into Jerusalem. The name, Palm Sunday, comes from the biblical account of people waving palm branches as they greeted him and spreading them on the ground as Jesus rode triumphantly into Jerusalem on a donkey. The multitude chanted, "Hosanna to the Son of David, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." As prophesied in Psalm chapter 118 verses 26. The crowd's behavior represents the anticipation and excitement surrounding Jesus' arrival. It marks the beginning of Holy Week and the final week of Jesus' earthly ministry. This event is often commemorated in churches on the Sunday before Easter by handing out palm branches to the congregation. Jesus faced opposition and hostility from religious leaders in Jerusalem during his ministry, which led him to travel to other regions to spread his teachings. The main opposition came from the spiritual leaders of the time, particularly the Pharisees and the Sadducees. The Pharisees were a Jewish religious sect known for their strict adherence to the law of Moses. They saw Jesus as a threat because he challenged their interpretation of the law and criticized their hypocrisy. Jesus often clashed with the Pharisees over issues such as Sabbath observance, purity laws, and the authority of the religious leaders. The Sadducees were another Jewish religious sect, but they had different beliefs and practices than the Pharisees. They were primarily concerned with the temple cult and priestly duties. They opposed Jesus because he criticized the corruption and commercialization that had crept into temple practices. Jesus also taught about the coming kingdom of God, which threatened the status quo and the power of the Sadducees. The Roman Empire controlled Judea at the time, and they were wary of any potential threats to their rule and were concerned about any potential uprisings. Jesus' popularity among the people and his claims to be the Messiah could have been seen as a challenge to Roman authority. According to John chapter 12 verses 1-2, Jesus went to Bethany 6 days before Passover, just beyond the Mount of Olives. Jesus returned to Jerusalem for several reasons. To celebrate Passover. This event fulfilled the prophecy in the Old Testament, Zechariah chapter 9 verse 9, that the Messiah would come riding on a donkey. He had a message of love, forgiveness, and salvation, and he wanted to share this with as many people as possible, including those in the religious center of Jerusalem. Jesus also knew that his time on earth was coming to an end, and he wanted to prepare his disciples for what was to come. He came back triumphantly to Jerusalem to confront the religious leaders who opposed him. The crowd's response to Jesus' entry with shouts of "Hosanna" and the spreading of palm branches indicated their recognition of him as the Messiah and King. Jesus chose to ride on a humble donkey rather than a majestic horse, demonstrating his humility and servant-hearted nature. This act serves as a reminder for believers to emulate humility in their own lives. Cleansing of the temple. On Monday, Jesus entered the temple in Jerusalem and drove out the merchants and money changers. He was expressing his dissatisfaction with the commercial activities that were occurring in the sacred space. On Holy Tuesday, Jesus cursed the fig tree. Like the religious leaders, it had a nice appearance but bore no fruit. It later shrivels up. Spy Wednesday is the day when Judas agreed to betray Jesus to the Sanhedrin, the religious leaders. Maundy Thursday, also known as Holy Thursday, honors the Last Supper, the moment when Jesus washed the disciples' feet, and the establishment of the Eucharist, or Holy Communion. This day represents the virtues of humility and servant leadership, and serves as an important reminder of the significance of these values in our daily lives. Agony in the garden. As Jesus finished his last meal with his disciples, he took a moment to gather himself before making his way to the Garden of Gethsemane. It was there, in the tranquil surroundings of the garden, that he sought solace in prayer. He experienced deep anguish, and prayed to God, asking if the cup of suffering could be taken away from him. Betrayal and arrest. Judas Iscariot, one of Jesus' disciples, identified him to the religious authorities, leading to his arrest. The crowd's initial enthusiasm eventually turned into rejection and crucifixion. Jesus was arrested and taken into custody. Trial and crucifixion. Jesus faced multiple trials, including before the Jewish religious leaders and the Roman governor, Pontius Pilate. Despite Pilate finding no fault in him, Jesus was sentenced to crucifixion. He carried his cross to Golgotha and was crucified alongside two criminals. Good Friday. This solemn day commemorates Jesus' crucifixion and death on the cross. It is a time for reflection, atonement, and remembrance of Jesus' sacrifice for humanity's salvation. Holy Saturday. This day represents Jesus' time in the tomb. It is a time of waiting and preparation for his resurrection. Easter Sunday. This joyous day celebrates Jesus' resurrection from the dead, signifying victory over sin and death. It is a time of hope, renewal, and new beginnings. Bright Week is a term used in some Christian traditions to refer to the week following Easter Sunday. It is also known as Pascha Week or Renewal Week. During Bright Week, the celebration of the resurrection of Jesus Christ continues with joyful and festive services. It is a time of rejoicing and reflecting on the victory of Christ over death. Thomas Sunday refers to the Sunday after Easter Sunday commemorating the doubting Thomas.